The trial's first day started with the sort of silence that resonated at a louder pitch than noise. The air in the courtroom had a subtle scent of wood polish and anxiety. Cameras were stationed along the back wall, red lights flashing like robot eyes, poised to record each flinch, each sob. Already the country was riveted to the case. The Brown family scandal, truth or betrayal. And nobody was going to miss what happened today. At the head of the courtroom was Judge Marilyn Creer, a woman famous for her steady firmness. She shifted her glasses to the end of her nose and looked out over the faces in front of her. "Let's get on with it," she said, her voice level, but interested. Meri sat at the plaintiff's table, her fingers intertwined so tightly they whitened at the knuckles. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she didn't flinch. Across from her, Kody and Robyn sat together. Robyn rested against Cody's arm, talking to him in a voice too quiet to hear, but his jaw was hard, his eyes scanning the floor. Behind them, Christine and Janelle sat in silence in the stands, two women between old allegiance and excruciating realities. The murmur of whispers swelled through the audience. Some felt sorry for Meri, others criticized her. But one thing was certain. Everyone could feel this wasn't a mere family argument. It was years of silence bursting open. "All rise," the bailiff cried. Everyone stood as the judge entered. Cameras clicked. Meri took deep breaths, whispering to herself, "You can do this." When they all sat, the judge started, "This court will now proceed with the case of Meri Brown against Kody and Robyn Brown. Mrs. Brown, you may begin." The words strike like a gavel to Meri's heart. Her attorney nodded to her. It was time. She stood up, her heels clicking quietly on the floor. "Your Honor," she started, her tone unexpectedly calm. "It's not about vengeance. It's about truth. For years, I've had questions that were always silenced. I believed that I could shield my family if I just ignored them. But silence doesn't shield. It will destroy." She glanced over at Kody and Robyn briefly. "They taught me to believe that loyalty meant love, but what happens when love conceals a lie?" Robyn's face set in an angry expression. Kody folded his arms, grumbling something under his breath. Meri went on. "I have with me a report that resolves the question I've carried for nearly 6 years, a question I never wanted to ask, but had no choice." The judge arched an eyebrow. "And what question is that, Mrs. Brown?" Meri hesitated, her throat constricting. "The paternity of one of Robyn Brown's children." A murmur of shock filled the courtroom. Reporters scribbled furiously. Robyn's eyes widened. She leaned forward, whispering frantically to her attorney. Kody slapped his hand on the table. "This is ridiculous. You can't bring my children into this sideshow." The judge rapped her gavel. "Mr. Brown, try to compose yourself." Meri swallowed hard. Her attorney gave her the manila folder, the same one off the hook. The corners were creased from the way she'd opened and closed it in her doubts each time. "Your Honor," she held up. "The folder. This folder holds the DNA report I legally obtained through official channels. I would like to introduce it as evidence." The judge nodded slowly. "Admit the document." The bailiff took the folder and carried it to the bench. The sound of his footsteps echoed in the silent room. Meri's eyes followed it, her stomach twisting. Kody leaned toward Robyn, his whisper harsh. "She's bluffing. She doesn't have anything." Robyn didn't answer. Her hand trembled as she reached for a tissue, dabbing her eyes before any tears fell. The judge opened the folder and read the first few lines. Her brows creased, then she looked up quickly. "This document will be tested under verification," she stated, her voice clipped but uncomfortable. Reporters inched in their chairs. Christine and Janelle exchanged glances. Christine's eyes apprehensive, Janelle's incredulous. Meri slowly seated herself. Her breathing was light. She had waited years for this day, yet the burden of it still pressed against her chest. Her memory fast-forwarded to the evening she first suspected. The fight in the kitchen, Robyn's off-putting response when Meri questioned her about medical forms for one of the children, the deflective responses. The late-night phone calls Kody believed she hadn't heard. And then, one afternoon, when Meri opened an envelope in the mail that had R. Sullivan written on it, a name she'd never heard. It was a medical bill. A DNA test bill. That's when everything changed. The judge coughed, jolting Meri back to reality. "Mrs. Brown, would you care to tell me how you came to be in possession of this proof?" Meri nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. I found inconsistencies in documentation about the child's medical history. In concern, I contacted the clinic and was told that a DNA test had been done under another name. When I asked them to confirm, they told me the file was sealed. So I got a court order." Gaspies again. Kody's attorney stood up at once. "Objection, Your Honor. This is a breach of privacy. This woman is using her hurt to annihilate my client's family." The judge held up a hand. "Objection made. But the report constitutes good evidence once confirmed." Robyn's voice broke. "Why are you doing this, Meri? You're breaking us apart." Meri stood to her, tears brimming in her eyes but voice firm. "We were already broken up, Robyn. You just didn't want to notice." Kody leaned in, his voice shaking between anger and fear. "You're doing this because you're resentful, Meri. You couldn't abide being left behind." Meri's jaw flexed. "No, Kody. I'm doing this because you left the truth behind, and now it's time it caught up with you." The judge looked at them. "Enough. This courtroom is not the place for emotional fencing. Mrs. Brown, go ahead." Meri nodded, regaining her composure. "Your Honor, I think that whatever is withheld in that report is not just about paternity, but the sanctity of every promise we made as a family. I was told to blindly trust for years. I did, and it cost me everything." Her voice broke. "Now, I want the truth documented. For once, I want the truth to count." There was heavy silence in the room once more. The judge breathed in deeply. "The document will be examined on court verification by tomorrow morning. Until then, both sides are prohibited from making statements of its contents public." Kody breathed a sigh, nearly one of relief. Robyn dried her tears. Meri sat down, heart racing, knowing what she had begun could not be reversed. Outside, in the hallway, there were reporters clamoring, screaming questions. "Meri, is the DNA true? Kody, are you the dad? Robyn, will you give testimony?" Within, however, the atmosphere was still charged, a tempest waiting to burst. Christine leaned over to Janelle and whispered, "Do you think it's true?" Janelle's response was gentle, but haunted. With this family, anything is possible. Sunlight filtered through the windows of the courthouse, casting golden stripes across the marble floor. But within the building it was cold. Cold like this occurs when truth is close to breaking through. The second day of the trial had already started, and the courtroom was more crowded than ever before. All the benches were occupied. Reporters stood against the walls. Even those who never followed Sister Wives watched through live streams, hoping to catch a glimpse of what Meri would finally say. Meri sat silently at her table, her fingers just touching the rim of her coffee cup. She had not slept. Her thoughts ran continuously over the words of the judge. Verification will be done tomorrow morning. That tomorrow was today. The envelope of DNA results sat sealed in an evidence bag on the judge's desk. It seemed so tiny, so innocuous, but she was aware that when opened, it would explode years of deception. The bailiff called the courtroom to order. Cameras flashed. The judge entered, her expression unreadable. "We'll begin," she said, her tone calm but heavy with anticipation. Kody and Robyn looked uneasy. Robyn's face was pale. Her hands trembled as she adjusted her necklace. Kody sat stiff, his jaw locked. He looked like a man clinging to control in a room full of doubt. The judge motioned to the clerk. "The test results have been confirmed by the state laboratory. I will read the results into record. Mary's eyes fluttered closed for an instant. The beat of her own heart was all she could hear. The courtroom exploded, gasps, muttering, and yelled questions. The judge brought down the gavel. Order! Order! Meri didn't budge. She sat rigid, eyes straight ahead. This was what she'd both dreaded and required. Kody leapt to his feet. That's impossible. His voice was hoarse and anguished. That's my child. Robyn grasped for his arm, saying softly, Kody, please. But he flung it away. His eyes were crazed with incredulity. Meri glared at him at last, her words gentle but biting. I didn't want to believe it either. Kody swung around to the judge. Your Honor, this is some kind of mistake. My wife, she would never— The judge cut in, her voice stern. Mr. Brown, the report has been verified outside of the office. This is not a typographical mistake. Robyn's attorney rose. Your Honor, if I could, my client has had no chance yet to share her version of this incident. This outcome, while astounding, doesn't necessarily suggest wrongdoing. We ask for time to put things into context. The judge nodded. You will have that chance. She addressed Meri. Mrs. Brown, do you wish to go on with your statement? Meri swallowed hard, her throat parched. Yes, Your Honor. She stood, grabbing onto the table for support. When I discovered there was a DNA test, I didn't know what to believe. I thought perhaps it was for medical purposes, or it was a misunderstanding. But then I understood. It wasn't an error. It was a secret designed to guard something, or someone. Her voice shook. I defended this family for years. I thought loyalty equaled silence, but silence only made the lies grow. She looked at Robyn, who sat rigidly, her eyes shining with unshed tears. When I first read that report, I felt it all. Anger, confusion, heartbreak. But more than anything, I felt liberated. Because the truth, however hurtful, frees you from the lie. The judge leaned forward. Mrs. Brown, are you saying there was deliberate dishonesty? Meri gazed down, then up again. I am proposing that there was fear, and fear can cause people to do desperate things. Kody's attorney interrupted. Your Honor, Mrs. Brown is guessing without evidence. But Meri didn't give in. I lived in this house for years. I witnessed the fear. Robyn lived in fear of losing Kody, and Kody lived in fear of losing control. Everything else, every rule, every promise, was just a means to keep those fears concealed. Robyn burst into tears. You don't know what you're talking about, Meri. She wept, her voice shaking. You think you know everything, but you don't know what I went through. The courtroom erupted once more. The judge waved for silence, but Robyn continued talking. You have no idea what it's like to be blamed for everything. To be labeled the favorite, the manipulator. I did what I had to do to make it through in that family. Kody attempted to soothe her, but she pushed him back. Don't touch me, Kody! You knew too. You just didn't want to acknowledge it. The whole courtroom halted. What did you just say? The judge demanded. Robyn put her hand over her mouth, catching herself. Tears ran down her face. Meri's face grew hard. So you did know, she breathed. Kody's face grew red. That's not what she meant. But Robyn shook her head, crying. I can't do this anymore. I can't keep pretending. The judge slammed down her gavel once more. Order! This courtroom will come to order immediately. When the noise subsided, she spoke softly. Mrs. Brown, you'll have the opportunity to clarify your statement under oath. For now, we'll take a brief recess. As the judge exited, the buzz erupted again. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, and the audience murmured with disbelief. Meri leaned back into her chair. Christine and Janelle exchanged glances across the gallery, both being aware that something much deeper lay hidden beneath Robyn's collapse. At recess, Meri lingered by the window, gazing out at the gray clouds building outside. A storm was brewing, literally and emotionally. Christine came over to her softly. You all right? She asked gently. Meri nodded. I think so. But it's odd. I thought I'd feel better. Instead, I just feel hollow. Christine looked down. The truth doesn't heal immediately. It first causes pain. They stood there in a silence. Inside, Kody sat with his head in his hands. Robyn was talking quickly to her lawyer, her mascara smudged. I didn't mean to say that, she repeated over and over. I didn't mean to say that. Kody gazed up at her, his voice low but trembling. Robyn, what did you mean? She glared at him, her lips quivering. "Not now, Kody." When court resumed, Robyn's attorney rose. "Your Honor, my client wishes to make a brief statement." They nodded. "Proceed." Robyn rose slowly, wiping away her tears. "I'm not a bad person," she started, her voice gentle. "I never wanted this. But sometimes we make decisions we can't reverse. Decisions we make because we believe it'll keep everybody safe." Her words lingered in the air. Meri moved forward, speaking softly. "What decisions, Robyn?" Robyn paused, her voice cracking. "The kind that begin with one lie and lead to a life of them." The courtroom erupted into a murmur once more, but Robyn didn't continue. She sat down, trembling. The judge exhaled. "This court will continue tomorrow for Mrs. Brown's testimony." As they all started to file out, Kody faced Meri. "You think you've won, don't you? You think revealing us makes you the hero?" Meri met his gaze, steady, calm. "No, Kody, I'm not the hero. I'm just the one who stopped pretending." Outside, as cameras swarmed and the wind howled through the courthouse steps, Meri whispered to herself, "Tomorrow the story changes." And deep down, she knew the DNA was just the beginning. The real storm was still waiting. When the trial resumed on the third day, the courthouse had become a spectacle. Satellite trucks parked along the streets, reporters stood around under umbrellas, and Sister Wives' fans waited behind barricades with signs that read, "Team Meri" or "Justice for the Truth." Within, the atmosphere was thicker than ever before, a blend of coffee, tension, and the faint smell of rain on the coats. Meri came early, her face serene but her mind agitated. She had learned a long time before that silence was a shield. Today, however, silence would shatter. She stared at the door as Kody and Robyn walked in, not meeting her eye. Christine and Janelle soon followed, their faces set with a look that said they didn't know whether to pray for peace or prepare for war. The bailiff bellowed, "All rise." Judge Creer came in, worn out but resolute. "This court will continue the case of Brown versus Brown." She searched through her papers. Yesterday, the court heard the authenticated result of a DNA test. Today, we will be hearing testimony and answers concerning that result. Meri got up to the stand. The courtroom fell silent. Even the cameras became quiet. Her attorney approached. "Mrs. Brown, in your own words, tell the court what motivated you to pursue the truth." Meri took a deep breath, collecting herself. "It wasn't for revenge," she spoke quietly. "It was for clarity. I needed to know whether all that I held dear, my marriage, my religion, my family, was constructed on something tangible." She glanced at Kody briefly. "When you live your life with someone for decades, you learn their habits, the rhythm of their dishonesty, the cadence of the silence. And one day, you find you both are quiet for so long the silence seems louder than the words." Kody fidgeted in his seat, his eyes scanning the floor. Meri went on, her voice shaking but distinct. "When I discovered that medical bill with another name, R. Sullivan's, on it, I had no idea what to make of it. But then I looked at the date. It was from close to when Robyn learned she was pregnant." The room erupted into a murmur. The reporters wrote frantically. Her attorney asked, "Did you talk to anybody about it?" "Yes," Meri replied. "I asked Robyn flat out. She said I was paranoid. She said I was jealous. So I let it go, for years. I told myself I was being cruel to question her, but that doubt never went away." Her voice broke. "When I finally received the report, I didn't know whether to scream or cry. I just sat in my car, grasping that paper, watching my hands tremble." She blinked away tears. "That's when I realized, love without truth isn't love. It's control." Her attorney nodded and retreated. No further questions. Kody's attorney stood to cross-examine. "Mrs. Brown," he started, "you testified that this wasn't an act of revenge, but your whole testimony is based on betrayal on a personal level. Isn't it true that you and Mr. Brown were divorced years ago?" Meri nodded. "Yes, legally, but not emotionally. I was still a member of that family." "Is it also the case," he pushed, "that following your breakup, Mr. Brown started prioritizing his relationship with Robyn, and you developed resentment as a result?" Meri didn't even blink. "I resented the deception, not the affection," the lawyer smiled glacially. And yet you presented evidence of a DNA test regarding a child who is not yours. Why? Mary's eyes were piercing now. Because I helped raise that child. Because I was assured that we were family. And because lies aren't lies just because they're not your own. The courtroom murmured once more. The lawyer paused, sensing the emotional tide had turned in her favor. Kody rose suddenly. Enough! His deep voice boomed through the courtroom. You think this is fair? You think humiliating us in front of the world makes you correct? The judge flapped her hand. Sit down, Mr. Brown. But Kody didn't obey. You don't get it. This is not about DNA. This is about her bitterness. He jabbed his finger at Meri. She's attempting to demolish what is left of our family. Robyn clutched his arm. Kody, please. But he brushed her away, his voice cracking. I gave you everything, Meri. And this is how you repay me? Meri stood, her tone level in the midst of the turmoil. You didn't give me everything, Kody. You gave me what was left. Gasps erupted in the room. The judge slammed her gavel. Order! If this keeps up, I'll have to empty the courtroom. The subsequent silence was heavy and thick. Robyn's tears rippled softly. The judge addressed Kody's lawyer. Control your client. He nodded, restraining Kody back into his seat. Judge Creer addressed Robyn. Mrs. Brown, you will get to testify in a moment. Robyn paused, swiping at her tears. I don't know where to begin. The judge nodded kindly. Begin with the truth, Robyn shuddered. The truth is messy. I thought when I met Kody that he was all I'd ever hoped for. Nice, patient, spiritual. Then I realized how much hurt was hidden in this family, and I thought, maybe I could mend it. She shook. But then I got pregnant, and there was trouble. The doctor said I should have a test. Kody didn't want to, said it wasn't needed. But I was frightened, she hesitated. I went myself then. I used a different name so nobody would know. Meri scowled. But that doesn't account for the test result. Robyn's eyes welled up with tears. Because that test wasn't just a test for health. It was a test of doubt. I doubted everything. My history, my decisions, even the man I was with. She looked at Kody. I did something wrong, Kody. Something wrong before I ever married you. And I've been trying to run away from it ever since. Kody's face paled. What mistake? Robyn's voice broke. That child isn't yours, but not because I cheated on you. Because I didn't know. I thought it was yours until that test. Kody glared at her, his mouth agape. You mean all these years you lied? Tears poured down her face. I didn't lie! I just didn't know how to tell you. Meri spoke softly. You knew when I asked, Robyn. You knew. Robyn shook her head. I was scared, Meri. Scared you'd all hate me. Scared I'd lose everything. Kody stood again, his voice breaking. You already have. Robyn's sobs filled the room. The judge leaned back, sighing. This court will recess for 20 minutes. We'll resume with additional testimony. As the gavel struck, the crowd exploded into chatter. Reporters dashed for the doors, phones flashing as they called in headlines. Meri sat frozen, her expression impassive. Christine leaned in, her voice barely audible. Meri, are you all right? Meri did not reply immediately. Her eyes were still locked on Kody, who now slumped alone, his head in his hands, the burden of his own pride finally crushing him. Then softly, she replied, No one ever wins when the truth finally catches up. But perhaps that is the idea. Perhaps the truth is not meant to be winnable. When court resumed, the mood within the courtroom was entirely different. The tension had moved from confrontation to shock. Individuals whispered in shock, journalists typed at top speed, and even the security personnel exchanged apprehensive glances. The bombshell that the child was not Kody's, and Robyn had been aware of that for years, had shook everyone to their core. Kody sat hunched in his chair, his normally proud shoulders slumped, eyes unfocused. For a man who had prided himself on control above all else, the truth had left him vulnerable. His lawyer said something in his ear, but Kody didn't appear to hear. Robyn, however, continued to sob quietly, her face concealed behind shaking hands. The judge came back, pushing her glasses up the bridge of her nose. We're reconvening the session, she declared sternly. Before we proceed, I want to remind all those in this courtroom, including representatives of the press, that emotional displays will not be permitted. We are here to find the truth, not to dramatize it. The courtroom settled once more. "Mrs. Brown," the judge said, addressing Robyn. "Are you ready to resume your testimony?" Robyn shook her head weakly. "Yes, Your Honor." Her response was little more than a whisper. "I had met Kody while my life was already complicated. I had secrets, I had debts, and there was a child from another relationship. Kody assured me that becoming part of his family would give me peace. But once I became pregnant again, my past began to haunt me. There were questions. About timing. About things that I hadn't disclosed." She shook. "The reality is, I had a short relationship prior to coming into the family, something I attempted to suppress and forget. When I found out there was any possibility that child was not Kody's, I freaked out. I figured if anyone knew, everything we created would crumble." Meri's attorney stood. "And did you ever think about the other wives? The ones you misled along with him?" Robyn cast her eyes down. "Every day of my life. But the fear was greater than the guilt." The words hung in the air. Kody jerked his head up suddenly. His voice was pinched, as if from pinched breath. "So all those nights I blamed Meri for destroying the family. All the arguments, all the hurt. It was all over a lie you couldn't handle." Robyn spun around, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't want to lose you, Kody. I didn't want to lose us." Kody sneered with a bitter laugh. "What we had? We founded our family on trust, faith, and loyalty, and you destroyed every one of them." The judge cut in brusquely. "Mr. Brown, you will show this court respect, but Kody couldn't quit. You know what's ironic? I blamed Meri for all of it. I told the world she was toxic, that she had broken my heart. But now I see. She was the only one who had enough guts to look me in the eye and tell me the truth." Meri's eyes welled up with tears, though she said nothing. The weight of those words was both vindicating and agonizing. Kody went on, voice trembling with rage and sorrow. "You didn't just lie to me, Robyn. You lied to our children, to our church, to everyone who trusted us. You don't realize what you've done," Robyn whispered. "Yes, and I'll live with it for the rest of my life." The judge sighed, facing the attorneys. "We will proceed with closing statements in a little while. But first, I will permit the other parties, Mrs. Christine Brown and Mrs. Janelle Brown, to present their opinions if they'd like to." Christine stood up first. Her tone was steady but laced with sadness. "Your Honor, we've all worn the pain of this family like an open wound for years. We smiled on television, told the world we were one big happy family. Behind closed doors, though, was hurt, jealousy, and betrayal. What Robyn did was wrong. But the thing is, this family's very foundation was crumbling a long time before today." Janelle was standing next to her, nodding. "We all hoped the dream would be real, that love could be divided fairly, that no one would be left out. But that didn't happen. We watched as Meri was pushed to the side. We watched as Kody changed, and we said nothing because we were afraid it would happen to us next." She gazed at Meri with soft eyes. "You deserved so much better, Meri. We all did." The courtroom was still, not from shock this time, but from shared sadness. It was no longer just one person's lie. It was years of emotional abandonment, pride and denial coming apart at the seams all at once. Judge Creer cleared her throat softly. "Thank you, Mrs. Brown and Mrs. Brown. This court recognizes your comments." She then addressed Meri. "Mrs. Meri Brown, do you have any closing remarks before we move on to closing remarks?" Meri slowly stood up. Her tone was soft, but it rang out through the room. "Your Honor, I wasted years questioning what I did wrong. How love that was vowed to last a lifetime would turn so frigid. I blamed myself. But now I understand. Sometimes truth isn't about punishment. It's about release." She glanced at Kody. "You used to say love was eternal. Eternal love doesn't hide behind deception. It doesn't require you to give up your peace for its convenience." She turned to Robyn then. "You were afraid you would lose everything. But the reality is, when you lie, you lose it when you open your mouth. Everything else is just time catching up." The room fell silent once more. Kody's eyes shone. "Meri," he started softly, "I don't know if I can ever repair this." Meri shook her head. "You can't repair what was never real." The judge declared a short recess before closing. As folks rose, cameras flashed once more. Outside, the crowd had doubled, waiting for news, hungry for every word. Christine leaned over Meri and whispered, "That was powerful." Meri smiled weakly. Powerful doesn't always mean easy. Outside the courthouse building, dark clouds coalesced once more. Rain began to fall, dampening the steps where reporters yelled questions into microphones. Inside, Kody sat still, gazing at the vacant chair where Robyn had sat. For the first time, he was genuinely alone. He murmured softly to himself, hardly audible. "I built a kingdom of wives, and lost them all to the truth." The gavel came down for the second time. "Court will now begin closing arguments," announced the judge. Everyone in that room already knew, however. The verdict that meant the most wasn't on paper. It was etched across their faces. The realization that secrets upon which love is founded will always come crashing down when truth finally knocks. The rain outside became a persistent beat, drumming against the tall courtroom windows as if mimicking every beat in that charged room. The crowd shifted back to their seats. Whispers drifted through the air like agitated ghosts. Everyone sensed the time of reckoning was imminent. Not merely legally, but emotionally. The truth had already incinerated everything it touched. Meri sat still, hands folded in her lap, eyes staring at the wooden floor. Robyn, across the aisle from her, wiped her eyes with a tissue, her face pale, her voice gone. And Kody. He was a man torn in two, rage and remorse struggling within him, each side unwilling to give way. Judge Creer came back, her dark robe flowing as she sat down. "Court is now in session for closing arguments," she stated. Her gavel stopped the chatter. Meri's attorney, Mr. Harlan, stood first. "Your Honor," he began, "this case is not merely about DNA or deception. It's about accountability, about the damage that comes when truth is buried to protect image and ego. Mrs. Brown did not come here seeking revenge. She came for clarity, for her family and for herself." He nodded toward Meri. For years, she was the villain. Today, the proof reveals who stood behind the curtain all along. Mrs. Robyn Brown's choice to keep the truth secret deprived not only my client, but a whole family of honesty and healing. He let that hang for dramatic effect, speaking low and tightly controlled. "Lies have an expiration date, Your Honor, and today, one of them finally expired." The judge nodded once. "Thank you, Counselor." Then Robyn's attorney, a fidgety man named Jacob, stood up. "Your Honor," he started quietly, "Mrs. Robyn Brown realizes her errors. She does not dispute the hurt she's inflicted, but she begs this court to realize that fear, not malice, motivated her decisions. She was afraid of losing her family, her husband, her security." He glanced at Kody, and then at the judge. "We can't deny that each individual in this room played a role, however small, in the disintegration of this family. Secrets, favoritism, jealousy, all simmered on the boil until truth had nowhere to catch its breath." The judge listened, expressionless. "I shall consider both statements," she said, folding her hands. Then, to everyone's surprise, Kody rose. "Your Honor," he stammered, voice shaking. "May I say something?" There was a silence. The judge nodded, briefly. Kody looked in the direction of the courtroom, tears shining. "For years, I believed that being a husband to several women was strength, leadership. I believed I could juggle love like books on a shelf. But along the way, I seemed to lose sight of what love even is. I hurt Meri, Christine, Janelle, all of them, because I was too arrogant to admit that I had made a mistake." He regarded Robyn. "And you, Robyn, I loved you more than I should have. I protected you when no one else would have. But you took that love and used it as a wrap of lies." Robyn sobbed harder, murmuring, "I'm sorry, Kody." He shook his head. "Sorry doesn't repair years of lying. It doesn't undo what you did, or what I enabled." He spoke to Meri next. "You did not deserve the way I treated you. I accused the world of what you did to me, when in reality, I was the one who betrayed us all." The courtroom fell silent. Even the judge's face softened for an instant before she straightened again. Meri spoke quietly to herself. Judge Creer finally started reading her statement. This court recognizes that this case is extraordinary, not criminal but intimate. While DNA evidence verifies the facts established, the real judgment here is one of integrity, not lawfulness, she addressed Robyn. Mrs. Robyn Brown, your act of keeping the truth hidden for so many years caused damage not quantifiable by statute, but by the degradation of trust. This court does not impose a formal sanction, but urges highly of family counseling and openness for the children's well-being. Then she turned to Kody. Mr. Brown, as the patriarch of this plural family, you had power and influence. You now have the choice of whether that power will be exercised for control or for healing. Next, her eyes came to rest on Meri. And Mrs. Meri Brown, although this court cannot give back what has been taken, it does acknowledge your bravery. To speak truth in the face of mockery is not ever simple. The gavel came down once. This session is adjourned. The echo sounded like thunder. Everyone remained still for a moment. Flashbulbs popped, but the stars of this drama remained motionless in their sorrow. Christine and Janelle moved towards Meri, putting a reassuring hand on either shoulder. Robyn got to her feet slowly, not daring to look at anyone. And Kody. Kody just looked at the ground, tears streaming down his face, his world shattering one truth at a time. Outside, the courthouse was ringed by reporters. Microphones and cameras were ubiquitous, capturing every nervous twitch. As Meri emerged into the open air, the rain stopped, as if the sky itself had been holding its breath for her to emerge free. One journalist yelled, "Meri, how do you feel now that the truth is out?" She hesitated, then gazed straight at the cameras. "Relieved," she whispered, "because sometimes losing everything means you finally gain yourself." Her words spread through the crowd. Kody emerged a few moments later, covering his face, not wanting to talk. The once confident man who'd defined himself by control now resembled a specter of his former self. Robyn trailed behind him, accompanied by her attorney, her weeping heard even over the commotion. Christine and Janelle watched from a distance. "Do you think they'll recover from this?" Janelle asked quietly. Christine shook her head. "Not as they were, but maybe that's the point. Maybe this was the only way to finally end the lie." Back in the empty courtroom, one folder remained forgotten on the bench, the report of DNA results that began it all. The page at the top danced in the thin draft, its black letters stark on white. Case closed. As Meri disappeared down the steps of the courthouse, her face was serene, almost serene. For the first time in years, there were no reporters walking behind her home, no gossip behind her back. Silence. And in that silence, she finally discovered what she'd been looking for all along. Not revenge, not validation, but freedom.